Okay. So I'll just like to formally, before I hand it over to Prof, we have our esteemed expert. I'll start with Prof. Julia Sibia, who is a Dean of School of Agriculture, Earth and Environmental Sciences. Can you please give her a huge round of applause? Thank you so much, Prof, for gracing us with this presence. I just remember in my years of varsity, it was very unlikely to see, so hey. And then we're moving on to our keynote speaker, who is Prof. Juice Jita, the African Center for Food Security, ACFS. Can you please give? We also have Dr. Naidu, who is a researcher at the School of Agriculture, Earth and Environmental Sciences. Can you please give him a round of applause, sir? Can you see, Prof, doctors, huh? It's open. I hope you have your pens and notebooks ready. We also have Dr. Tandanani Kwele, who is a patent attorney at the Spur and Fisher. Can you please give him a round of applause? We Vuyolwethu Gotiwe, who is a program manager for the ABIPP at the Technology Innovation Agency.
I'm online.
We also have, she's joining us online. Good morning.
It's afternoon.
We also have Ms. Noxolo Mthethwa, who is an editor of the UKZN Press. Can you please give her a warm welcome also? Thank you. Thank you so much. Prof, I'll now hand it over to you to do the formal welcome introduction, just for us to understand the baseline and the foundation, and just to set a tone in terms of why are we here today, because we want to go out of this room having innovative solutions, not only for our schools, but also for terms of how can we create sustainable that have access with food and also promoting the sustainable development goals. Over to you, Prof.
Well, I was expecting a nice podium. But anyway, a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today. To all of you who have joined us in person, and to our who are joining us online. So I am the Dean of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. So you all shall virtual. And this day is celebrated annually. I hope we are all aware, on the 26th of April. And the initial event was actually organized in 2000 by, she has mentioned, establishing the World Intelligence Organization, which entered into force in 1917. So preempty what the other speakers are going to say, but I'm just going to try and say, just indicate why IP is important, especially for us who are in agriculture. So the official theme for Intellectual Property Day is IP and the SDGs, which are our Sustainable Development Goals, building our common future with creativity. So as UKZN, its theme for this particular workshop is adapted from this year's 2024 theme. So the theme, strategies and IP, unlocking sustainable to food insecurity. So nations, members in 2015, they 23 for sustainable, by creating the 17 sustainable goals, the SDGs. So these SDGs, they constitute basically a plan or a strategy to a better future that extends across human activities. And these activities include things like climate change, education, and others. So with agricultural innovations, we hope to address some of these goals. She has mentioned goal number 1, SDG number 1, which is no poverty. Goal number 2, which is zero hunger. We also have goal number 3, which is good health and well. So from the food that we produce, it well-being and good health. There's also 12, responsible consumption and production, which also affects what we do in agriculture. Therefore, promoting agriculture and ensuring food security are essential elements of both the 2030 agenda and also the African Union's Agenda 63. I hope we all know these agendas. So is the drive for our economies in Africa. I think on average, it contributes to GDP in sub-Saharan Africa. And another fact is that 60% of the world's arable land is actually in Africa. So we should be able to feed. But why is it that Africa actually has the largest number of people who are going hungry? They are malnourished. What are we doing when we have 60% of the world's arable land? So agriculture also contributes almost half of the continent's workforce, which is about 54%. And 54% of our workforce is in agriculture and its related industries. They assist in achieving sustainable development goals and the agenda. In this case, intellectual property rights, they play a critical role, technology innovation, which will help us to achieve the SDGs. So we dedicate this day to promoting the role of intellectual property in inspiring and facilitating the development, protection, and dissemination of agricultural technologies and solutions, encouraging innovation and creativity to enhance food accessibility and they're able to address food insecurity and undernourishment. So who are going to and the importance of to address food insecurity on our continent. They will take us through also the legal frameworks regarding intellectual property and food security, how we can engage in the commercialization of the products that we develop from our research. We are a university. We are required to do research. Some of you are postgraduate students, you are doing research, and we hope from that research you have products that can actually be commercialized and assist in solving the issue of food insecurity. So without preempting what is ahead, I just want to highlight the importance of IP and its role in agriculture. So I was just thinking about the word intellect, and I looked in the dictionary, what does intellect mean? So the definitions I was getting were like brain, mind, mental powers, intelligence. So I was just thinking, okay, so here we are looking at your ideas, your creative expressions that have resulted from your thought process. You're using your brain. Your brain is working very hard. So since you are the inventor or creator of these ideas or inventions, they are your property. So if the public is willing to give status of property on your ideas, it then becomes intellectual property. So that's in layman's terms, explaining what intellectual property is. So why is this important? It's important because it gives you exclusive legal rights to your invention or your creation. And it's usually for some time. I'm hoping the legal and policy will actually unpack that. So enjoy and reap commercial benefits that result from your creative efforts. So I hope this can actually encourage us to innovate, encourage us to have inventions, because you can actually enjoy the benefit invention. So it's important to also ensure that you are able to recover the costs that you incurred during research and development of that product. You can adequate so that can assist in continual investments in your research and development. It also protects your investments. It protects your time, the money and effort that you invested, inventor or the IP. But overall, it also assists the economic development of a country, promoting healthy competition and industrial, which results in economic growth. As we are faced with the task of feeding our population in the face of many, especially as a result of climate change, we need to think of innovative ways to increase food production for those of us in agriculture, and for us to address those SDG goals, number 1, number 2, number 3, and the others. So this call and to develop viable, innovative agricultural solutions. So the of IP in generating revenue, thus drive this innovation. So if you think of, the rewards that you get from this IP when you have an incentive to innovate and come up with that can assist us in addressing food insecurity. So this afternoon, in the presentations that are coming, in the discussions on the role in driving innovation and addressing global challenges. I'm not going to give you the different types of IPs. I'm hoping that the presenters will unpack that. But remember, I've said, participate in the discussions. If you have any questions, clarifications that you need, we have some experts here who can assist. But I want to encourage it. We need people who can use their brains, who can use their minds, and we can through IP. Thank you very much.
Thank you so. The role in driving innovation and creativity, right? And powerful insights. And I just want to now say, introducing you because you were doing the welcome introduction. I thought you were part of me, like you're my co-host or something. So I ended up not reading her bio, and I'm like, okay, my co-host, right? I'm officially welcoming you. I would just like to formally read Prof's bio, because I'm sure you must be wondering, with such insight and the driving force in terms of really realizing the impact of IP in protecting our minds, our rights, and also just driving the force of innovation and creativity. And I loved how you touch the aspect of agriculture, because we do. So I just want to read Prof. bio. Prof. Julius Biya is the acting dean and head of School of Agriculture, Earth, and Environmental Sciences. She's also the cluster academic leader for the production sciences. Prof. Biya is an associate professor in plant breeding and has over 30 years of experience in teaching and research. Her research both conventional and molecular breeding tools for various traits. These resistance, drought, and drought in various crops, particularly maize and sorghum. There's 104 articles in peer-reviewed journals and conference proceedings, and graduated 4 MSc and 36 PhD students from various not South African, but African countries. Can you please? I think that is evident by the wealth of knowledge and baseline you provided for this celebration today. And I just want to remind each and one of us the core. And our core today is to what? Is to create innovative strategies to unlock solutions for food security. So I want you to think about that as we're now going to welcome our keynote address. And I wish you, ladies and gentlemen, to please engage. Also, though, use your chat. I can see there's already chat messages that are appearing. So please do follow us in terms of the conversation and people. Yeah, all right. Ask questions and also engage, because we are all and also come out of this room having had what? Insight. Please introduce Prof. Joyce Chita. Prof. Joyce Chita was academic at the University of KwaZulu-Natal for the years. She's currently the director of the for food security and an associate professor of food security program. She is widely published academic in the transdisciplinary field of food and nutrition. Security, and passionate about community engagement with the commitment to translating research into action. She's an experience in acquiring and leading and multi-year research grants. She's an experience in supervising and mentoring and doctoral students at UKZN. Originally, she contributes to food security policies and programs through training and networking. Her expertise and program include food security and water use security, development and market access. She is an astute networker in building partnerships and relationships, including collaborations with local international team. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please stand up and welcome keynote address Chita.
Good afternoon, everybody. As I've been introduced, my name is Joyce Chicha, and I work in the School of Agriculture, Earth, and Environmental Sciences, leading the food security program there. It's a very interesting topic, very passionate about it. I'm seeing some of our postgraduate students in the room, so that exciting and comforting knowing that they remain excited. So today I've been asked to share what are the current challenges, the current state of food security in the country and globally, the challenges and opportunities, and where can we innovate so that there are products and services to improve food and food security and nutrition security. I welcome our Dean and our academic leader, Prof. Siwela, who's sitting here with us, which is great to see that we have the support we need. And thank you to UKZN Incubate. This is how the presentation will go. I'll introduce some key issues related to the current state, challenges, opportunities, and we will conclude. I'd like this picture to take in the diversity of what you're looking at, the colors, the different foods, and also start thinking what this does to the outcomes that we desire. The reason why we consume food, yes, is to have energy, but the ultimate goal is to be well, to have an active life, to be able to contribute to society and use our talents and skills to contribute to the development and GDP of the country. That's why we eat. I know sometimes we have other reasons, but the key reason we eat is for nourishment, to derive an active life, to contribute to the country where we live and globally. So take our word diversity. So when you're looking at this, you're seeing the diverse foods and their nourishment. Coming in Africa, I think you will not forgive me if I don't say this is some of the foods that are desired, particularly by the region. What would be more good is to combine what was in the first slide and this slide. Not in one particular meal, but throughout the diversity and to have the macro and micronutrients that are required. So now that I have very good pictures, I cannot be responsible of whether Incubate thought about this and perhaps it's hiding somewhere around the corner. First, I'd like us to look at the definition of what food security means. We have different backgrounds, and it's disciplinary science. So it includes all the sciences, environmental, social, and economic. So it cuts out different sciences because the nature of it is it's an outcome of what we do in the food system. What producers do, what marketers do, what consumers do, therefore we derive the outcome. Hence, I showed you the plate of food first. But of food, there is a system that is complex, that renders some countries, some individuals less food secure compared to others. And that is the challenge for us to be innovative, to work in one direction to try and resolve that SDG goal 2. I won't go into the SDG itself. It's already understood that you know what it means. So food security, the definition, it is not some, but all, at all times, have physical, economic, and social to sufficient, safe, nutritious food that meets dietary needs and food for an active and healthy life. So it's a very lofty and idealistic definition. that must all come around it from our various aspects with open minds to contribute for it to become true, at least in our lifetime. There is a timeline, 2030, to try to address some of this. How many years do we have? 6 years. So let's be thinking about that as we go through the presentation to see if the 6 years will be achieved or not. Remembering that we once had the MDGs, which were not met, and we've moved to the SDGs. So will we move on again after 2030? So let's be thinking about that. So what you're looking at here is a very complex framework showing us that the amazing food diversity you saw at the beginning needs all components of the food system to work together timelessly to deliver that diversity, that adequacy to all people at all times. So it's very complex. So the food must be produced in that environment. So the food needs to be produced, which means we need farmers. We need land. We need inputs. We need markets. We need packages. Some of our food, it's different from country to country, but in this country, 99.999% of what you ate came from a shop, a system. This complexity delivered that meal you've had or are still going to have. So the food needs to be produced. We need an economic system to be functional. A country like South Africa is very cash-based. Even the deepest of our rural countries, there are social grants, there are jobs. That's what people actually need in order to access food. It's different when you cross the border. Many countries on the continent actually feed themselves. There are no social grants. They farm and acquire food that way. We also need the supply chain to be functional. We are in a place called Scottsville, surrounded by 3-4 supermarkets, where you as students acquire your food. So the food needs to come from a farm somewhere, which is the production system. It needs to be stored traveling on these trucks along the N3 to be delivered to supermarkets. Some of our students have visited the fresh produce market. They have an understanding of how that works. So there is a system that delivers our food. There's packaging, there's retail and markets. All of us are marketed to. We like different types of bread, different types of rice, different brands of milk. We don't even realize how we are so marketed to a point of choosing what's on our plate. Of course, there is income and price that determines whether what we need and what we want lands on our plate. But there's a system that delivers our food. This system is impacted by various challenges, including demographic drivers. So population groups consume different kinds of food. If you are in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, you'll find a different kind of a diet. If you are in Limpopo, in KZN, it could be the same farm product, but expressed and prepared in a very different way. So if you're in KZN, you'll eat putu. If you're in Limpopo, you'll eat something else, same product, pap. Eastern Cape, more sem. Botswana, same product, but more mealie rice. So you can see the diversity of the diets, which then talks to that part of processing food sciences, understanding what the consumer needs and how to prepare that particular food product so that it is accessible, long shelf life, all of that comes into it. So before this turns into a whole marketing lecture, we will move on. It's just an expression of showing you the diversity and complexity of what we need. Before even going out of this framework that you're looking at, that farmer there, connecting to what Prof. Julia shared earlier, has to plant a certain variety that will survive the climatic conditions, that will be drought tolerant, that will survive some of the diseases that are out there. Somebody somewhere needs to breed it, either naturally or using biotechnology. So that's important. The beginning of the food chain involves other sciences that you and I, okay, maybe not me, but some of us as consumers are not aware of what really goes behind food security. Right at the beginning of the food chain is seed security, the varieties, the survival of crops, plant pathology, soil. Soil science is critical because all of that needs to be produced in a production system. The biophysical elements are critical. We need soil scientists to tell us what is the condition of the soil, how to correct it to make sure that it gives us the correct yields. I'm trying to not turn it into a lecture, so we'll move. So what are the current challenges and concerns? Globally, we are in a challenging time. It feels like we are recovering from COVID-19 lockdowns, but it also feels very uncertain. As we are recovering, maybe some sectors more than others, there is what feels and looks like a threat on the horizon, right? We are hearing and seeing what seems like an old war, the Ukraine war, but there's now a new war and rumors of more war. Why war? War in that framework that you've just seen right at the bottom there, it's one of the environments that affect food production and food supply chains. Right after the Ukraine war started, we saw the challenges on our shelves. What happened to the cooking oil price? We all experienced it. It was shocking because we don't produce enough oil for ourselves as a country. We still import food. South Africa for a long time has been said to be a food secure country, even now. But it's become quite uncomfortable, even for myself, to say South Africa is food secure. Because what does that mean if a country somewhere else can decide, I'm not sending my rice to South Africa, we don't produce rice. That they will keep their own rice because of this uncertainty. I'm not sending my pasta to South Africa. I'm not sending my noodles, students, to South Africa. So we are interconnected. Our food systems are interconnected, and issues such as war disrupt those supply chains. So as we feel like we're recovering, there's this impending, uncertain issue rising up because of the wars. So the challenges are global, but also there are challenges in the production space. Food production, even in our country, is challenged by this HCOM that may decide to switch us off at any time. Farms rely on electricity for many of their operations, refrigeration, even diesel that becomes so expensive. All of these are fuels and energy that we get from outside of our country. So if a country that supplies our petrol and our diesel decide, I'm not sending to other parts of the world. So it feels and it looks quite concerning. accelerated hunger. Why are we talking about accelerated hunger? So some countries who used to not be on the global hunger index list as very hungry countries are now flagged as more hungry countries after the 2020 lockdowns. We can understand why. Production has gone down in some of these countries. Some industries haven't survived. Therefore, hunger has increased. So all the work that was done, the SDG work, the MDG work, before 2020, some of it has lost ground. We are also concerned some of the challenges today are poor quality of foods. When food is very expensive, what do you care about as a consumer? Price. As much as you know that you need the diversity you saw in slide 1 and 2, price, affordability, budgets will determine what eventually lands up on your plate. And as students, you are very aware of that. I was a student also once, so I know what that means, to live on a tight budget. So quality of food becomes secondary to actually just having the food. As young adults who are in the room, perhaps you can survive some of that, but perhaps not long term. There are population groups who cannot survive that. Children under 5, children in vitro, which means they are still in their mother's stomachs. The first 1,000 days of life is critical to build their brains, their limbs, everything they need, their heart, their liver, everything they need to survive is formed way before they are born. And if we don't do anything about good nutrition before pregnancies, early, before 2 years, we may lose some of that potential, and it's not reversible. That condition is called stunting. This is a critical issue. The quality of food is not a small issue per se. So if we are to innovate, that's a big area of innovation. What are those crops that can be grown innovatively in rural areas, in urban centers, accessed by people at an affordable price, and yet of a high quality in nutrition? What are they? That's where we need to innovate. Population growth and urbanization, that's one of the challenges that we see today. The South African population is quite high now. Urbanization is also advancing. Population growth on its own is not a bad thing. Some countries actually need to have their populations grow. As you are aware, in China, there was a policy of 1 family, 1 child, but today they have a challenge because you need the younger generation to grow and be taxed, contribute to the tax base. But if it's just 1 child per family, at some point you have more older people who are on pensions and are earning less and less, and the country's tax base goes down. So you actually need a good population growth, but you need the economy to carry that population. So it's very complex, but it needs all of us to move together, understanding that it is an outcome of food security we're looking at. Poverty and inequality, we see this a lot in the food security space, because if poorer households receive a certain amount of income, their diet will be inferior compared to the higher income households. It's also not a perfect statement, because the higher income households, they could be buying wrong fatty foods that don't have good nutrition. So we also need awareness and education for those households. Resource scarcity and environmental degradation, it is a challenge that we are aware of. So you may want to produce better, using better information, better seeds, but they cost. Therefore, your farming remains limited because you are actually resource limited. So we need programs that can improve that. It's not always just the inputs, it's also knowledge, understanding how to work together with the environment to improve soils, to improve the whole chain of production. Knowledge is important. So we need a good extension services to extend that knowledge. Climate change, I don't have to stress this more. Each one of us can see the change in seasons. It looks and feels like there's now just 2 seasons, summer and winter. The other 2 seemed all merged in one. We have snow in countries where there never used to be snow, erratic rainfalls. Imagine being a farmer, knowing that you plant a certain crop in December, November, and it's flooding, raining the whole time. When do you plant? If you lose a whole season, how do you feed your household? So it's a big challenge, climate change. So we need strategies that can work hand in hand with the changing patterns of the weather, seeds that will survive, methods that will ensure that the crops are not washed away. In urban farming, what do we need to do? So innovation alongside new ways of farming, not thinking only about the soil. So coming back to South Africa, moving a little bit away from the globe, what are the key challenges in South Africa now that we face in the food and nutrition space? Our very high unemployment rate. This is the official statistic, but we know that it's more than this because it keeps increasing quarter by quarter and season by season. So at the moment, it means 1/3 of those who could be working, which translates to about 12 million people who should be in jobs. And a lot of them are young, some with qualifications are not in the job market, which means we are losing their youthful energy and skills to drive the economy. South Africa has 60 million people, but only just under 6 million taxpayers. So think about that. If you're in a household with 60 million people, think of it as a household, and only 6 people are actually contributing financially. It means there's a tiny amount to go across everyone. Remembering that in a country, it's not just feeding people, it's education. We're sitting at a university. Universities are subsidized by government. That comes from taxpayers, hospitals, police services, all of that. And of course, the social grants that directly buys the food. And we know it's not enough. But the challenge should be to increase that 6 million people, which means the economy has to grow to absorb that unemployment statistic so that we have 10 million people, 15 million people being able to contribute to the tax base. We currently have 18 million people on what we could be called permanent social grants, which means every month they receive a social grant. On top of that, after COVID, we now have 10 more million people receiving the unemployment 350 Rand social grant. So that's 28 million people from the 6 million people. Do you see the danger? The danger is lack of sustainability, which means we need to grow the economy so that less and less people actually need to be on social grants. This is hitting us in a very concerning way, where we currently have close to 30% of our population stunted. Stunting means all forms of development were stopped, stunted, cut short when they shouldn't have. Where cognitive development, the way we think, critical thinking, all those skills that have been listed as top skills of the future. We need engineers, we need doctors, we need complex thinkers like yourselves in the room. At 30% of the population has been left behind. That is very dangerous for any country. We need to work hard to bring that statistic down, because it means we are losing a tax base out of that 30% of people. Try and think about it. Every 10 people you meet, 3 are most likely never to be able to contribute to the tax base, but will constantly require the 7 to contribute to their life. That is not sustainable. So by the way, government doesn't have money. You are the purse. We are the ones who pay the tax. Government does not have a job. It's us who have the jobs. When you go to buy your lunch at Checkers, you pay tax, you pay VAT. In your taxi to town, you pay. We pay the fuel levy. So the citizens are the job. So if I was government, I would work hard that 30% can actually contribute to the tax base. But I'm not. There's something blocking at the top there, but what that says is a food and nutrition security change driver, number 1. So what I have done is, out of the complexity of all these challenges, there are many. We can't address all of them. I've selected about 3 that I think are driving change in the food security space, and that's where we can innovate. Urbanization. It is said that 70% of South Africa is almost urbanized, and globally the urbanization rate, depending on region where you are, is between 40 and 80%, where if you think about 70%, it means 7 people in South Africa live either in an urban area or peri-urban area. Those 60 million people. That is a lot for large towns to absorb all that messes with that high unemployment. Because people move to towns looking for better opportunities. They arrive and those opportunities don't materialize. So what do they eat? Is there something we can do in the food security space where towns, regional planning, starts looking at different ways of producing? Most rural people, especially the older ones, actually have agricultural skills. It's either they've been involved in farming or they've worked in a farm at some point. So they may have production skills. So looking at providing spaces and programs to ignite urban farming. People move to towns for convenience. Urbanites drive food security looking for convenience. Your students, you go to a shop, it would be strange to see a student buying a huge pumpkin. They would, because they will need to cut it up, remove the skin, store it. They will look for the prepared one and the right size so that it doesn't stay in that fridge or their friends borrows it permanently. So convenience is a big thing in urban towns. There's an opportunity there. There's innovation there. It means somebody needs to cut up those vegetables, needs to package them and find the right consumer. Not everybody goes into a formal supermarket. There are street vendors in big towns and peri-urban areas. Therein lies a form of innovation that young people can be involved in. What is the impact of urbanization that we see in towns? People are looking for easy availability of food, as I've explained. They're also looking for inexpensive food. And we need to think about how to bring the nutrition into that inexpensive food. How do we improve those inexpensive food, particularly for young childbearing young females who are planning to have children in the future, so that those children, we don't know, we could be having our top innovator who will solve water challenges. And because we didn't provide enough access to food for the pregnant mother, we lose out. So it's that important, the issue of nutrition. So we don't want to continually risk and increase stunting and vulnerability of food insecurity amongst the poor. So urbanization is a big driver, but there's also opportunity to innovate. The next driver is population growth. As I said earlier, population growth on its own is not a bad thing. However, the economy needs to grow enough to absorb. And also, where is the population growth taking place? Where is the innovation taking place? There is a thinking that we need new towns in rural areas where we can have new places starting out of agriculture, because most economies are based and they start from agriculture. The idea of agri-hubs to create new semi-urban towns, what you could call rural towns. This should be able to decrease the rapid move of people to the large metros that cannot absorb them. The physical infrastructure, the sewage system, all systems cannot absorb the mass move to towns. People are looking for employment, so perhaps we can look at new crops, Prof. Julia, breeding new crops to ignite new activities in these towns, new foods. Actually, people in rural towns miss some of the rural foods. How do we bring them to towns? How do we bring imfino to towns? Green leafy vegetables. One of the master students sitting here was telling us that she has an idea to do that. So that's the kind of innovation we can do, so that as the population grows, we need that tax base. So as the population grows, there's actually economic activities to absorb them. We all hear the slogan that the youth is the future. It truly is, because old people get old, and as they die, so is their income. They are not taxable anymore. So we need the youth to continue to be economically active so that they can be taxed, so that the old people, when they go to hospital, there's doctors, there's nurses, there's police, men and women, there's food security experts running food security programs, there's plant breeders, there's food scientists, there's lawyers, everything we need. You think of yourself, one day you'll be 50. It's coming. We just change chairs. So it's coming. As one generation grows, the youth really is the future of the whole generation. The third food and nutrition security driver is climate change. It impacts agriculture, forestry, fisheries, all land users get impacted. Even I see event organizers here. They know this. If they have an event, a wedding, a nice sunny wedding, and the rain decides not to follow what they read on Google a week or 2 days later, things get ruined because it's erratic, it's unpredictable. So we know that the weather impacts all of us. It's not just the weather, it's also the temperatures. Certain crops germinate, grow in yield. They need certain temperatures. They need them to be cold at a certain physiology of the crop. They need certain temperatures to germinate at a certain time. So if the wrong temperature is in the environment at the time of germination or flowering, you lose yield. Therefore, the food becomes expensive in the market as it becomes less and less. So it affects all of us as consumers. We lose biodiversity. What that means is we need many types of crops and flowers. Anything that is alive has a role in the production system and the environmental system. So if more plants are dying off because of the harsh climate, it means certain pests which were well controlled will now have a good time. We had the fall armyworm in 2017-18, a new pest that we were not prepared for started damaging the maize crop at the time. So we can see the damage that we will face. Therefore, having less food, more expensive food, which means the poor will have less and less good quality of diets. Migration pressure, as populations that were agricultural based and cannot cope with the erratic climate, they're thinking, let me move out of agriculture and go and try get a job in town, creating more pressure in the urban cities. We also need to be aware of implications for future rural to urban migration patterns. We can innovate, come up with these new cities or rural cities to see now urban, rural, back to the rural area migration, but going back there for a job, not just going back there because there was no job. So all of this impacts our diets and food prices. As I've said before, we start seeing diets that are weakened, but we can improve and innovate to see cheaper food, but energy dense and less processed. So this is a problem, but with innovation, we need to improve our foods. For example, noodles, students, there's really nothing in noodles, but you eat them a lot. Perhaps think about adding some spinach to it. But how much is the bunch of the spinach? If it's 20 rand, you're going to think twice, right? But if it is affordable, you may add it. Maybe it's convenient, even dried spinach, to sprinkle enough on your noodles. So those are the innovations we need to see in the food space. We also need to see that the problem of exclusion of small farmers in the value chain is resolved because they can produce niche products. They can be brought alongside the commercial farmers to improve both their own income, but the diversity and food choices of those that are now in urban areas or wherever they are. Food prices, we've all experienced this. They are increasing daily, even for people who are employed. The price of chicken, for example, fresh chicken, is difficult to look at, and yet frozen chicken has its own challenges, higher salt, and so have you. So we all know the increasing of food prices. It is a challenge to all of us because some of the food is imported. The oil that we need is imported. Therefore, we need to see food prices that are low, food prices that the poor can access, but there's also nutrition in those food prices. So let's quickly look at a graph like this. When we eat, this is what happens to us. So we have some form of a meal here. We can have breakfast. Our body takes up that food as, so the desired movement of our blood sugar should be like this. Slow in our bodies, 3 to 4 hours. However, if we are eating highly processed foods, what happens is we have a spike in energy, and then 20 minutes into the lecture, I see students sleeping. In primary school, this is serious. It's a GDP issue. It's that issue about having thinkers, engineers, innovators that will look after you one day when you are 50 or 60 years old. You can pour money on them. If you don't feed them well, there's no engineer that's going to come out because they are eating highly processed cereals, and this is what happens. That's why maths in school is always the first lecture. Hopefully at varsity too. Was it the first lecture? I think so. Yes, when I attended in DSLT. It was early in the morning because you're still healthy and fresh. But this is what happens to children in poor economic situations. They eat highly processed food, or they are not eating. They haven't broken their fast, or they didn't even have dinner. So they come very empty, and therefore they drop. So there's no concentration. There's no absorbing of the knowledge being extended in class. So what that does is, how to correct that, how we should be eating is, we should be eating whole grains, vegetables, legumes in the morning, so that our energy goes like this. Farmers in rural areas actually understood this. This is how my grandmother ate. In the morning, she didn't eat. She'll take whatever was cooked last night, which was often some form of a legume, either boiled beans or boiled peanuts still in their shells, and a sweet potato. And she'll go to the fields to go farm. Around 11, 12, she's having her first meal. The whole day she's foraging, eating whatever she's finding there, and eating her one meal in the evening. 2 meals a day. Today we speak of intermittent fasting. They lived long. She died at 100 years old. And they ate a diet that was clean with less processed. So there was an example in there. So that's what we need. But very few of us actually eat like this. But for children, it's detrimental. For governments, it's detrimental. South Africa has a school feeding program. I would speak to our colleagues in dietetics and food sciences. I'm sure someone has studied that diet to see what those graphs look like on the menu. Sometimes there's a menu and something else happens in real life. So I've spoken a lot about the inferior diets. So if there's any message you want to take away from today, is that a poor diet really is an economic issue, and we need to innovate around improving diets, particularly of children. Then we will see the innovators we're looking for in the future. Part of the problems includes low birth rates. I've spoken a lot about stunting, but also poor cognitive development, poor brain formation, therefore less thinking, no critical thinking, therefore poor outcomes. So the pass rate in matric, in that school, in that region, in that village remains low. Children from that region don't make it to UKZN because there are points that we need in the BSc Agric and the BSc degrees that bring you into food security. They don't make it to the area. They don't make it to medicine. They don't make it to all these high-performing careers. Therefore, the poverty cycle remains in place. That household remains entrenched in poverty. And yet, we know that education, as tough as the economic market is, still today, with a bachelor's degree, you are still better off than someone who didn't finish school. So I'm worried about our SDG 2 targets. We have 6 years. Think about the complexity of that framework you saw in the beginning. How are we doing? I don't think we're doing very well. What are the opportunities as I'm moving towards concluding? The opportunities can be around the issue of technology. So we can use technology in all of the 6 pillars of food security. So in accessibility, how do we produce? In urban farming as one of the drivers, I mentioned that urban farming is one of the drivers. So how do we innovate? Can we continue to use only the soil in urban areas as a production base? There's not enough land in urban areas. So what about the roof? What about vertical farming, using your double garage to actually convert it into a production unit? What about small glass houses, greenhouses, vertical farming? We need to think innovatively. These technologies exist. They actually exist. Are we applying them? Does the Department of Agriculture look at urban agriculture as a form of agriculture? Or because there's no tracts of land, it's not really agriculture, it's too tiny. What is the potential? Most municipalities don't even have an urban farming policy. There's no official or anyone to talk about. They talk about the environment, but not agriculture. And yet there could be possibilities. They are, because they are happening in other parts of the world. There is no one size fits all technology. It's looking at those 6 pillars of food security. So in production, in access, young people, you are always on your phones. How do you receive your food? Sometimes you order from Mr. Delivery, Uber Foods, Uber Eats, delivering everything now. All these apps, what are the innovations there? Can you put traditional foods there, putu and mas, and actually get it to be delivered by Mr. Delivery? Because perhaps your segmented population group that you'd have studied, written a business plan about, they could actually like to sit in their home and press a button and have putu and mas at the gate. Does it always have to be a chicken or a burger? If it is putu and mas, how do you do it? How do you save it? How do you preserve it? So innovation around that. Niche foods, interesting foods that people are actually looking for and get excited to see it on these platforms. I would buy some of it. But we also need integrated planning and governance. For example, cities, Pietermaritzburg, where's your urban farming policy? I know Durban has a unit, it's working on it, but we've struggled here in our local city to find direction. Because communities need the land. We've had an example in one of our projects where the community actually identified the land. There was an agreement with the councillor, meeting and all. We brought the inputs because it's research, and another sector from another section went and destroyed the crops. They said that is land for housing, that councillor didn't consult them. A whole social issue. So integrated planning so that those social issues are ironed out. There's agreement by the community that we are agreeing that we'll use this area for urban farming, and this is how we'll do it for fairness and access. So those are some of the lessons. Improving working across the sector. There's many of us today in the room from different sectors. How do we work together? How do we not remain as a food scientist only? Actually, if you're a food scientist, you value the whole chain behind you. You are already transdisciplined. If you're a plant breeder, you already know that you need to ask the farmer, what's going on with drought? How is it behaving? You appreciate some of the social science aspect. If you're an economist, you can't just model forever. Come, get some understanding from people, then model solutions that are targeted and they can actually transform. We also can innovate around looking for sustainable food production methods. We can produce using organic methods, and there's a variety of them if we approach them area by area and have a midway system, depending on what the soil is showing you. Some farmers can't afford the external inputs that they must buy. What can they do? Can they grow their own compost? Perhaps they need training, not chemicals. So each area, each production system, if it's for subsistence, clearly they don't need that expensive bag of seed that's 5,000 Rand. Maybe they need a smaller amount of a different kind of seed. Maybe they need a water harvesting, climate smart technology instead of irrigation. How to harvest when it rains because they don't have a JoJo tank. So a lot of it is knowledge, but how do we package it, innovate it, and engage communities with that. As a university, we have a strong community engagement policy. That's what we should be doing, bringing solutions to communities, translating the science because it exists. This area here about using advanced biotechnology and genetics, very important. Drought tolerance, disease tolerance, but also to take care that the way we use science is also ethical. Small farmers need seeds that they can afford. But if we can close the seed system and make seeds available that are only royalty-based, what will that 2-hectare farmer do? Because the type of seeds, inputs, they can't afford that fertilizer bag also, but they need the knowledge. Water harvesting, they need the knowledge. So universities are actually critical to work together with farmers and communities that are producing to design the solutions together before the research takes place. Because then that way the products, the knowledge, not even physical products, because in most of what we will do, our IP will be knowledge, the processes, the pathways we open, that becomes the IP, but it belongs to the community and the university. One issue I didn't touch here is precision farming and lot farming in agriculture. So these are some of the technologies that exist. In terms of water, which is a big issue for South Africans, we're actually a water scarce country. So we need policies around water conservation. They exist, but it's about packaging them, translating them, and taking them to the community. Most of the science, we don't have to start from scratch, especially in the food security space. We can go back to Prof. Julia and say, this is what our farmers are saying. They need this kind of seed. Prof. Shimiles, Prof. Julia, where should we go? Perhaps they've worked on it already. It's published, but sitting in a journal somewhere, but not in a program or a policy that a community can use. So that's where the innovation is. It's actually a low-hanging fruit. We need to go and find the science and take it to communities. How do we intervene from a policy point of view? Education, the extension services are important, but we need to assist some extension services with capacity, enough technical knowledge to actually be able to change the farmers. Some of the extension officers maybe are not exposed to these technologies because they are not reading the journals. The academics are writing for the journals, but the extension officer needs the technology. So there's a disjuncture there. So we need to work together with extension services, even in designing our research, so that they can immediately take our products and services and use them, extend them to farmers. So we need to innovate from the farm all the way to the fork. I've spoken about urban farming. As I conclude, you will hopefully forgive me. It's a passionate subject. I can feel I've been talking a lot. But as I conclude, I'd like to say there's a need for capacity, but also capability in extension services, but also in ourselves and our students, so that when there's a need to change, we are agile, ready to change. We have a mindset that says, as scientists, we can work across disciplines. You don't sit in your corner saying, but I'm a geographer, but I'm a plant breeder, or I'm only a transdisciplinary scientist. In fact, if you say that as a transdisciplinary scientist, we need to put you back to class because you need everyone in order to translate your work. But we need to act timelessly. A 2-year-old in a household that could be receiving a social grant and it's child-headed actually needs social services, researchers to respond quickly, because for that child, 2-3 days of diarrhea could mean death. It's that serious. So it needs everyone to respond quickly. We need real-time data collection, but processing of this data quick enough in order to identify where are those households that are really in need, or where is a region in the world that produces a crop that we all consume, like rice, like wheat. If there's a war coming, what do we do? Do we start to grow more of those crops in our countries? That's a policy decision. So we need leadership. We need political leadership. We need scientific leadership. We need leadership in the academic space to manage these drivers that I've spoken about earlier in order to respond quickly. So we need to be watchful and responsive so that we have safe, nutritious, and affordable food. Thank you for listening.
Incredible presentation, Prof. I think she deserves another huge round of applause. Amazing, amazing. You know, Prof, as I was listening there, you just got me thinking about thinking. And I loved how you really unpacked in terms of us thinking about the role of IP in developing new ways and interventions in terms of farming also, and not just thinking about soil, but also thinking about ways on how to invent such, stages even in our homes, and not just to rely on, the traditional methods. And also, I loved when you touched on the aspect of what is the role of IP in really growing the economy, okay? And got us to think about complex thinking. But now I just want to hand it over to our audience. I'm sure you must be heavily burning with, engagement, insights after Prof's presentation. I just want to get your thinking. Where are you in terms of your understanding? Do you want to share your experience, maybe perhaps before we unpack Prof's presentations? Maybe you could share your experiences of maybe some of the examples or experiences you've done at home. Like I can share mine. I remember we did this thing of, umkuba. Umkuba yini ngesingisi? Yes. So we, the Coca-Cola bottle. So we took the Coca-Cola bottle and then empty it, and then ufaka umkuba corner, and then you put, tomatoes will grow, onions will grow, and that is just one of the ways which we can invent ways on how to farm in our own spaces, but also not relying on the soil. So I just want to get you, what are your thoughts after Prof's engagement? Here's the mic. Oh, they're audible. Oh. Anyone can go, you can share your experiences or even comments that you might have for Prof. Postgraduate students, you are here, I heard that. Okay, thank you so much. We have a hand here.
The presentation, Prof. It was very enlightening and giving us a challenge as well. I'm from community development myself. My study is on food security and the issues of food aid in the context of Africa. So it's really enlightening. And thank you so much for the suggestions that you have given us to come up with the solutions and where the opportunities are existing. And even the issue of urban farming, as you were indicating. I did try to grow in my backyard some potatoes and vegetables, only to realize, no, the soil has a problem, which brings the soil science part of it to test the soil. Perhaps this is the experience of some of our African communities. They've tried to grow things, but they see the soil is not producing. There are other scientific underlying factors. So as you were saying, the extension services, they come in as a critical vehicle to also disseminate critical knowledge on what to do and how to go about with the soils that are not producing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those beautiful insights. It's really amazing to see students who are passionate about food security, right? Thank you so much for that.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I'm a food security student, doing masters with Prof. But thanks Prof for a wonderful presentation. But I just want to check with you and perhaps everyone gathered here, because I'm very much passionate when it comes to issues of extension officers specifically, because I believe those are the people on the ground. They know what the farmers go through every now and then. And then from the academic space, you have a body of knowledge, as you have mentioned, that there is a disjuncture in between these two groups. But what is the mechanism that one can use in terms of, because the body of knowledge, it's like very fat when it comes to information. And yet that information is very much needed on the ground. And the extension officers, they are very much bombarded with what they have already in terms of their plate, and then the boxes that they have to tick daily. And yet we miss this space of collecting this information and taking it down to the farmers. I say this because I have a friend of mine who has worked extremely hard in terms of coming up with a worm compost, which is it's a supplement from these synthesized chemicals that farmers use, and then as you mentioned it, that at some point they cannot even afford. But how do we like close that gap if somebody has come up with something that can be an alternative and a better alternative for the farmers in terms of price, in terms of availability as well? Thanks.
Thank you, Henry. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can. Okay. It's a pity in South Africa and most of our African continent, there is an example that exists actually how to bring research from universities closer to extension services. In the USA, they have what they call land grant universities. So universities that would often have a research farm. Those universities of agriculture actually by design have to work with extension. In their own performance agreement, it is stated who their extension partner is. So whatever research they are doing, the extension partner or colleague informs their research program to say, in this region, we are in Mgungundlovu now. In Mgungundlovu, these are the top 3 challenges or top 5 challenges. It's the soils, diseases, and maybe water. The researcher at the university is not only doing research for the sake of just research. They may include it, but definitely will include what the extension officer, it's in their performance contract, it's the way it's designed, therefore it flows easily. So we've missed an opportunity in South Africa. We try and do it project to project. In food security and many of our programs, we will work with an extension officer in that area. But because it's not a must, if you don't find them, you continue with your research, which is a missed opportunity. So it needs leadership, it needs change in policy. It's actually very easy to do. And from what we've seen, the extension officers appreciate it very much because they become part of the program. They learn themselves. We see their knowledge base increasing, their confidence. When they go back to the farmers, even the farmers see a different extension officer who now feels capacitated to talk about soils. Maybe they didn't do it in their degree, but working alongside a researcher who's doing that gives them the confidence, the basic knowledge they need.
Thank you so much. I see Sis Zama is signing me that, hey, we're running out of time. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we are still going to get time for Q&A. Just after our esteemed guests have spoken, please just be patient. But I just love of what you just said right now in terms of there are policies in place. We just need to practice them. Okay. And also what I'd like to encourage to our students especially is that, you know, when such engagements occur, we may learn the whole day and get insights and get, you know, rich knowledge, wealth knowledge, but the onus is upon us to go back to our respective communities and enact such knowledge. Because if we have such engagements and it ends here, then what's the use of having this, right? So I urge all of you to say, with this wealth of knowledge you've heard and still going to hear from our esteemed guests and team of experts, to say, what is my obligation? What is my individual responsibility for me to, you know, promote this IP through creativity and innovation to really achieve food security in our country? All right. Are you accepting the challenge? Are you? I don't hear a yes there. Are you? Amazing, amazing. And PMP, like you said, Prof, is full of land. I mean, needless, you know, all of that. So please make use of your communities, make use of the land, okay? And now I just want to go straight to Dr. Denver Naido, our next speaker, who's going to be now touching on the academics' point of view in terms of innovative solutions to food insecurity crisis in the African continent. So Dr. Naidu is a researcher at the School of Agriculture, Earth and Environmental Sciences. He is a dynamic and dedicated academic and researcher currently affiliated with the African Center for Food Security at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Dr. Naido is a widely published academic with expertise in the transdisciplinary field of food and nutrition, with a specific focus on smallholder farmer development and the water, energy, food ecosystems nexus. His research is motivated by a strong passion for empowering women and improving household food and nutrition security. His expertise and current research program encompasses food security, water use security, land use security, and small farmer development. As a passionate community development engager, Dr. Naidu is committed to translating research into actionable outcomes. He possesses extensive experience in supervising and mentoring master's and doctoral students at UKZN, contributing significantly to the development of the academic community. In addition to these focal points, his broader research interests include climate change and the intersection of food and nutrition security. Dr. Naido is also actively involved in product development initiative utilizing underutilized indigenous crops. Beyond his academic pursuit, Dr. Naidu is a member of Golden Key International Honor Society. He holds the position of the National Department of Agriculture Advisory Committee and is a group member of the WRC project. Dr. Naidu's international exposure includes various academic and work assignments. His commitment to research and practical experience makes him a well-rounded academic dedicated to making a significant difference in his field. His contribution extends beyond the academic community and positioning him as a valuable asset to the society at large. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Denver Naidu.
Thank you, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. My duty is easy. I'm going to be looking at addressing food insecurity through innovative solutions. But before I begin, I just want to make a note to say that some of the solutions that I'm bringing forward are not new, okay? These have been done by many researchers, many different food insecurity specialists throughout the continent. What we need is a comprehensive upscaling of these particular solutions that I'm going to be talking about. This is the outline of my presentation. Just some key challenges that I want to talk to you about is that food security is a major challenge facing Africa for millions affected by hunger and malnutrition. Okay, Prof. Julia mentioned earlier on that Africa possesses 60% of arable land, but struggles to feed its population. And the question is why? Even though we have all of these different innovative solutions that have been there for a long time. The continent's annual food import bill is around $80 billion, and 70% of Africans lack access to healthy food. Now, food security threatens the well-being and survival of vulnerable populations. It undermines economic growth. Prof. Chicha also mentioned about that, and the stability of Africa as well. And COVID-19, we know it wreaked havoc. And so COVID-19 had exacerbated the issue with 282 million Africans going to bed hungry. Now that's a huge statistic there, okay? Now, to ensure food security, we must produce more food. We need to upscale on producing more food. We need conservation of forests to promote sustainability, and climate resilience is also an imperative. The adoption of technologies, okay, is also key. Tailored to African agriculture is crucial for boosting productivity. Now, I'm not going to dwell too much on this because Prof. Chicha has spoken about it, but these are some of the key challenges from an economic, environmental, and social perspective, okay? I'll just highlight some of them, but I won't go into all of them. So from an economic perspective, we see that market instability and poverty. Closer to home in 2021, we saw the 2021 riots and what impact that had in terms of market stability, as well as distribution of goods and services as well. Agricultural productivity. We see limited agricultural productivity due to factors such as climate change, trade barriers, the war in Ukraine and between Russia. Wheat prices went up, and if you are a country dependent on imports, then it's a problem in terms of trade barriers. From the environmental perspective, climate change. Climate change is here, it's here to stay. We need to do something about it. Land degradation, okay? Water scarcity. Africa is a dry continent, okay? We already seen aspects of water scarcity and what that is doing. I mean, here in Johannesburg, we've seen how people are struggling to have water on a daily basis. Closer to Durban, in the South Coast, they don't have water. They don't have water for weeks on end. So it is a big problem. And so we need to find better ways of how to manage our water resources. From a social perspective, conflicts and instability, rural-urban disparities. Prof. Chicha also talked about that. All right, disparities between rural and urban areas impact food availability as well as access. All right, and I mentioned again, COVID-19, the pandemic has exacerbated food insecurity. The gains that were made before the pandemic, it all fell away because of COVID-19. All right, so now I'm going to talk about some of the solutions that we could use to really address food security. Remember, in the beginning, I said we really need to upscale comprehensively on these particular issues. So the one important thing is political leadership, right? We need policy development and implementation. We have it, right? We have it, but we really need to make sure that this works for our people. Policy leaders play a crucial role in creating and enforcing policies, all right? We need resource allocations and funding, right? Resource mobilization, innovative financing mechanisms like impact investment, which means if a farmer is impacted by climate change, do we have subsidies to support these type of farmers in the face of climate change? Advocacy and international cooperation. Political leaders need to and must advocate for food security at international forums, all right? Public-private partnership, robust government leadership and public partnership are prerequisites for expanding food production and sustainability, as well as effective policy. The second aspect is the role of governance, all right? We need transparency and accountability in policy making, right? Governance plays a crucial role in ensuring transparency. We need to be accountable to make sure that the policies that we put into place are relevant to the needs of the people, as well as effective regulatory frameworks. Governance establishes effective regulatory frameworks to monitor and also ensure quality and safety foods, right? The promotion of inclusive decision-making. We need to bring people in that are impacted by it. We need inclusive decision-making, which processes and fostered by governance and helps addressing the needs of the vulnerable populations. We also need to look at governance efforts that focus on creating corruption-free food distribution. I mean, during COVID-19, we saw what happened. You know, the foods that were supposed to get to the people were not actually getting it, right? People were taking these food parcels and taking it to their homes. So we need to ensure that we need to create corruption-free food distribution systems to ensure equitable access, all right? Some of the challenges and opportunity to governance and food security is governance faces a challenge of addressing power imbalances, all right, within the food system. So we need to ensure fair distribution and access to food, creating opportunities as well as improving food insecurity. We need to build resilience as well, resilience to climate change. Government efforts need to build resilience to climate change and impacts to food production, as well as promoting international cooperation. Prof. Chicha mentioned as well with the university in America, that type of collaboration, we can borrow from that and we can improve our extension services by borrowing such models. So promotion of international cooperation plays a vital role in promoting, in addressing food security and the challenges that we also face. Now, the other aspect is partnership, right? The importance of fostering partnership, collaborative efforts in addressing food security. Partnership enables coordinated actions, all right, to resources and pooling to tackle food insecurity. So collaboration is important. I mean, for example, in South Africa, a couple of years ago, we saw different departments working in silos. Thankfully, today we're beginning to see where departments are beginning to work together across the continent as well. We're beginning to see that partnership and collaboration happening to address this very big problem of food insecurity. We also need to leverage on diverse expertise and resources, partnerships to bring together diverse stakeholders, including governments, NGOs, private sector, and we need to leverage on the expertise to address this problem of food security. Partnership also contributes to the sustainability, as well as sustainability of interventions, as well as ensuring long-term impact to food security, right? Strengthening community engagement. That's one of our KPIs at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, is that we really have to focus on community engagement, all right? Because we are a microcosm of what society is like. And so therefore, community engagement and empowerment is very key and crucial to addressing food insecurity. So partnership empowerment to local communities, allowing them to actively participate in decision-making processes as well as solutions to food insecurity. Building resilience through inclusive partnerships that include marginalized communities help build resilience, and that's the inclusivity of gender balance, gender inequalities, and so on. That's an important aspect. Fostering exchange and capacity building, partnerships that facilitate knowledge sharing, capacity building, empowering communities. I'll skip this slide. So the role of research, that is our domain. This is where we are at the university, all right? Data-driven problems. Research plays a key role in identifying and analyzing data to understand the underlying causes and prevalences of food insecurity. That's what we do, all right? We need to ensure that research contributes to the development of innovative solutions and technologies that can effectively address food insecurity. I mean, within this university, we are seeing different research initiatives where they're using precision agriculture, they're using drone technology to address issues of food insecurity, okay? Research also facilitates the assessment of interventions, impacts, and establishes the feedback loop for continuous improvement of addressing food security on the continent. Okay, technology is a big thing. Africa is set to achieve inclusive growth by investing in its human capital, right? The region will see the world's fastest rise in its working age population, right? And that is estimated to grow by 740 million net increase by 2050. Now, Prof. Chicha mentioned that although we see a population growth, we also see an opportunity in that. Now, and this is where the youth, the working age youth can play a critical role in terms of technology dissemination, technology uptake to address the issues of food insecurity, okay? So leveraging digital platforms and technology can improve access to information resources and market opportunities for communities. Promoting agri-tech solutions, introducing agricultural technology and innovation that can enhance productivity and sustainability. For example, I read not too long ago, the African Bank has a program called TAT, and I can't remember what TAT actually stands for, but please go and read it up, okay? TAT, it's a program that looks at technology transformation. And what they're doing across the African continent is, for example, looking at drought-resistant seeds, trying to increase productivity, trying to introduce rice productivity in the continent. Okay, so we can produce these commodities instead of us also importing it from the West. Okay, so empowering through digital literacy, promoting digital literacy and access to technology empowers communities to engage online. All right. Prof. Chicha also mentioned we all had phones. You use your phones to buy your takeout from McDonald's and so on and so forth, using Mr. Delivery and Uber Eats. So we can use this type of technology to also address some of the challenges of food security, empowering the communities that we work in as well. We also need innovative food distribution mechanisms, exploring innovative approaches to food distribution, such as community-led marketplaces that can improve accessibility to food security. And the one other component is climate change. We need concrete climate change development action. All right. So climate smart agriculture, promoting practices like conservation, agriculture, agroforestry, precision farming, as well as improved resilience to productivity. We need international cooperation and diplomacy as well. International cooperation and diplomacy are essential in addressing the global impact of climate change. We make all of these wonderful agreements at the different COPs that we've had, but are we really truly implementing some of these things in our own countries and the globe over as well? Access to climate information, strengthening climate information services and early warning systems for informed decision-making and climate risks mitigation. Okay. Diversification of livelihoods. We need to also be supporting income-generating activities such as livestock rearing, aquaculture, non-farm enterprises, to reduce the dependence on grain-fed agriculture as well. So there needs to be a diversification that needs to also happen. Sustainable natural resources, ecosystem restoration. I was watching a documentary not too long ago, I think in the DRC, where there's extensive soil erosion taking place. Houses are falling into the ground. So if that is happening, we need extensive restoration practices, okay? Because of the constant deforestation of our forests. So implementing initiatives like reforestation and soil conservation to mitigate land degradation and enhance ecosystem resilience. Water resource management, promoting approaches such as rainwater harvesting, water efficient technologies, as well as water availability for agriculture. That's where precision agriculture could also play a big role in terms of water management. Stakeholder engagement and participation. Inclusive governance. Inclusive governance fosters meaningful engagement and participation in stakeholder engagement activities, including smallholder farmers, local communities, as well as civil society organizations. Okay? Strengthening food systems. Market access and infrastructure. We need to be investing in rural infrastructure and transportation networks to improve market access and reduce post-harvest losses. Nutrition-sensitive agriculture, okay, that speaks to what is actually happening on the ground. So it must speak to what's happening to our communities, promoting diversified crops, higher fortification and nutrition education to address malnutrition and improve dietary diversity. Social protection. We need to scale up on the protection programs like cash transfers, school feeding schemes to enhance food security, as well as cross-sectional collaboration as well. Collaboration across sectors such as agriculture, health, education are essential for addressing systematic challenges of climate change and food insecurity, as well as integrated approaches that can yield comprehensive solutions. All right, and one of the other important aspects is addressing gender inequality. Right, gender inequality and climate change. Gender inequality exacerbates the impact of climate change on food and nutrition security in sub-Saharan Africa. So we need efforts to combat food insecurity that must prioritize addressing gender disparities and empowering women in agriculture. Knowledge sharing and capacity building. Research institutions play a vital role in sharing knowledge and building capacity and promoting best practices amongst farmers, extension officers, and especially women as well. And collaborative research partnership, collaborative research initiatives and that involve academia, governments, agencies, and also international organizations to address this particular to address food security in a much interdisciplinary way. And so in conclusion, I want to say that addressing food insecurity in Africa is essential for the well-being and survival for our economy, for our economy's prosperity on the continent. And we need to do this through concerted efforts and innovative solutions that we can create futures where all Africans have access to nutritious food and thrive, as well as partnership. Partnership advocates for policy coherence that aligns to efforts and various stakeholders and governments to create enabling environments for addressing food insecurity. Thank you very much.
Amazing, amazing. Just one note, UK is an incubator. I think we should have done this for a full day, right? Because I think 3 hours is not enough. I'm a PD, but look at my notes. It's like I'm an attendee because such insights are very, very thought-provoking. And Doctor, I love how you incorporated the interconnectedness of what we are saying about the overall growing the economy and changing and promoting sustainable communities. Because I heard you speak so much about, oh, sorry, I'm short, guys. But I was just saying that I loved how, Doctor, you incorporated the interconnectedness of how to create sustainable communities. And you touched on a very important point, I think, which we are to practice, especially in, the world that we live in, which is changing every day. And that is resilience. Being resilient to change. And in particular today, being resilient to what? To climate change and changes that are affecting our well-being, our health, and also, just our overall quality of life. And most importantly, this one, because it speaks to my passion now, I'm being, biased, which is gender equality. And in that sense, we are empowering women and we're saying, let's include other marginalized societies for us to reach a comprehensive approach that we're talking about. So a round of applause for our doctor there. You can see I'm just like sparkling up when I talk about gender rights, and that is passion. I would like now to hand it over to our audience, just 2 hands, either a question or a comment, especially related to our presentations.
Thank you, Dr. Denver. My name is Wadzanai. I'm from the Center for Transformative Agriculture and Food Systems. I am really happy to be here. The question that I want to ask, I think it can also be answered by Prof. Chicha as well, because I see that in both discussions, we've had issues about stakeholder engagement arising as something that's necessary and an opportunity to transform our food security system. So my question is, right now, the work we are doing, it's about food imbizos. We want to start a food imbizo in KZN. So we're actually having one on the 30th of April, and we've been trying to reach out to various stakeholders in civil society, academics, government, and so forth. But then one of my struggles has been sometimes there is no interest to get these stakeholders to participate, because that food imbizo is to try and bring different stakeholders interested in food security issues to be in one place and to discuss various issues and co-create knowledge, co-create solutions. But I'm sensing that I don't know whether it's the space, is it over-researched, is it over-discussed? My question is, how can we get stakeholders to effectively engage and want to be part of such forums like this food imbizo I'm talking about, so that we can actually start being practical about engaging and bringing solutions to the table?
Thanks, Wadzi. I don't have all the answers for you, right? But I think what is important is that we need to start beginning to be much more serious about this plight of food insecurity, right? It affects all of us. And we see the numbers in terms of the statistics, in terms of how high food insecurity is on the continent in South Africa. And we really need the commitment from practitioners, from policymakers, to our leaders to ensure that this needs to happen. I mean, we've mentioned in the past that a lot of departments have worked in silos in the past. We are beginning to see some gains made in terms of departments working together, but there's more that we can do. And so we need to upscale on that. We need to comprehensively address these issues. And that is only through policy development. It needs to be in the policies. Sometimes maybe it needs to be legislated that in order for you to address food security, it needs to be part of legislation. And you've got to work collaboratively to address these issues. And I think, yeah, that's my one point I would like to make. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. On the last slide, it mentioned advocate policy. So my question is, how effective are the government's policies in combating food insecurity?
This answer might sound cliche, but we have some good policies in the country, right? Which is also constantly being reviewed every 5 years, I think. But we have issues of capacity and issues of implementation. We need to have the right people who understand the policy. First of all, we need to have the right people who develop the policy. And remember, I mentioned inclusivity, so we need to involve these people who the policy is going to be articulated to, number one. Number two, we need to make sure that we have the right people who understand the policy to implement it effectively. Because it's one thing having the policy, but it's another thing on its implementation. And that's where we lack in terms of addressing policy issues in this country and I suppose on the continent as well. We need to really focus on how do we capacitate people who are going to implement it. Because you can have the policy, but your interpretation of it will be different and the way it plays out on the ground is another story. So we really need capacity around those areas in the development as well in the implementation of policy. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing, Saz. I love this conversation. It could go on the whole day. And just to reiterate on those points, Doctor, because they're very important in terms of when we are talking about how to negotiate and understanding within these communities about such conversation, capacity building workshops are very important. Awareness programs are very important in that regard, so that we can be a one and shared responsibility in driving the common goal of realizing what the SDG goals. So without wasting any further time, I would like to now move on to our next speaker. But before that, I think we deserve a round of applause for being an engaged audience. It really does speak to say quality over. Nah, thank you so much. So we're moving right along to our next speaker, which is Dr. Tandanani Kwele, who's a patent attorney at the Spur and Fisher. So he's going to be touching on the legal and the policy frameworks of the intellectual property and food security by exploring the linkages between intellectual property rights and food security. Dr. Kwele holds a PhD in chemistry from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and an LLB from the University of South Africa. With a background in both science and law, Dr. Kwele has played significant roles in the field of intellectual property, having served as a patent searcher and examiner, and later as a senior manager at the Patents and Design Registry of the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. Dr. Kwele brings over a decade of experience in patent prosecution. Specializing in chemistry, Dr. Kwele has also been an instrument in advising and assisting both local and international applicants in drafting patent applications and evaluating the patentability in the intervention of the field. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please give a warm welcome to Dr. Kwele.
Good afternoon, everyone. I must say I'm not the doctor you think I am. I'm no longer in the lab and no longer doing R&D work. I've moved to IP, so I see R&D when I see it in patent specifications or when I link it to IP. But I think it's important to say I'm not the only one from the Sport Fisher family who's in this room. And we have Twengile in the audience. She's also from Sport Fisher, my colleague. And she actually started in this university. She was doing genetics in this university. But she's pursuing a different route now. And thank you for inviting us. I'll keep it short because the previous speakers have already touched on IP somehow. So my job is easier. So I'll try to connect the dots between the IP and the SDGs. I happened to read a report a few months ago where the Director General of WIPO commented. He says we are only on track with only 15% of the SDGs. So it doesn't look like we will reach the finishing line. So the effort now at WIPO is to link IP with SDGs. So my presentation will be quite short. I'll touch on the role of IP as an incentivizing mechanism. And I'll also touch on striking the balance between IP protection and access to innovations. I'll touch a little bit on IP and some technologies in the agriculture. And I will send again the message about what is it that WIPO has done, what is it that is already publicly available in terms of the innovations that can already be used to solve societal problems. Well, in simple terms, IP refers to the creations of the mind. So when you think about IP, you could be thinking about patents. And the patents are protected under the legislation, which is the Patents Act. In my previous life, I was working in the patent office. I know most people will associate that office with registration of companies, but they also register trademarks, they also register patents, they also register design rights. So that's where we worked in the past before we moved to a law firm. So under patents, the legislation is Patents Act. You're protecting inventions. An invention could be a new process that is not obvious to a person skilled in that field. It could be a process, it could be an improvement of an existing processes. You also have plant breeders' rights. Under plant breeders' rights, you're protecting new plant varieties. This one is not under the CIPC. You don't register for these rights under the CIPC, but it sits with the Department of Agriculture. That's where the register is. You have industrial designs or you have designs. Under designs, it could be an aesthetic designs or it can be the functionality. So with designs, it has to do with how it looks. Given that here, we are talking to an audience that is in the space of agriculture and R&D. When you think of a design, it could be a design tool that its purpose is to perform a certain function in agriculture. So you could protect it under design. You could protect the way it looks. You can protect if the way it looks is necessitated by the function it performs. So that's the other aspect. Of course, we have a trademark. I was looking around here, I see we all having water aquil. Surely something must have triggered in the mind when you went to the shop and you decided not to touch another water, but to touch aqua. So what is a trademark? A trademark, it distinguishes goods or services of one enterprise from those of other enterprises. So when you walk in the shop, you already have in mind, you associate a certain product with certain quality. So that's your trademark. Well, we'll have copyrights. Copyrights, I think at the university level, most people are aware of copyrights. It's literary works, it's artistic works. I don't think for purposes of food security, we'll touch more on that. I think I'll expand more on plant breeders' rights. I'll expand more on patents as well. Well, I know that sometimes the IP system is seen as a barrier to access to information, to access to knowledge. But with this slide, I want to send a message that actually IP is at the center of creativity. Is at the center of advancement, of taking us to a next stage and making us to fulfill those, to make sure that we are on track with those SDGs. So when you think about IP, think about it as a mechanism for incentivizing creativity and encouraging people to come up with new ideas, to create more inventions. With that, what do you get in return? You get protection, but that protection is not forever. It's for a limited period so that you can recoup some fair return on what you had invested. I'm sure those who are scientists here will tell you the effort it takes to be a plant breeder, the effort it takes to come up with new ways of farming. So somehow there must be a mechanism of how you can recoup the investment that you put on your R&D. So of course, the main point that people miss about IP, when you protect, you actually disclose what is it that you have come up with. At some point, this thing is going to be in public. At some point, this information will no longer enjoy protection, right? So you will have access to it. So we improve on this. We develop new ways of doing our farming. We develop new tools of farming. We even develop new ways of treating our crops. So the investment that we made, and we made a return, we can reinvest again, coming up with something new. So let's understand it in that way. Well, the lawmakers will always try to make sure that the IP system is fair. It's not, it's balanced. It's not one-sided. It doesn't favor those who hold rights and does not favor those who have to consume or make use of the technology. So that's why there's a limited term. For patents, protection is for 20 years in South Africa. For plant breeders' rights, could be 25 years if you are talking about vines and trees. But for other plant varieties, you are talking about 20 years again. Well, for a trademark, this could be an indefinite, provided you renew your rights. It's because a trademark is more like associated, it protects logos, it protects brands. Like for instance, before we were even born, there was Coca-Cola. There's Coca-Cola today. Just imagine when you were to walk at the shop, you just see something black in the bottle with no sign. You may not have comfort of, am I really buying Coca-Cola? I'm used to Coca-Cola. So such rights, they can be indefinite, provided you renew your rights. Another way the lawmakers are striking the balance between the IP rights and to access to innovation is that there are exceptions sometimes. For instance, in South Africa, there are inventions that are considered not to be patentable because the policymakers have decided that they should not be patentable. For instance, you cannot patent a plant variety. And in some jurisdictions, like in US, you can. But in South Africa, the lawmakers have decided that you can't. So even in the plant breeders' rights, we have what is called the farmer's privilege. It means a farmer, if they save the seeds and plant again and replant the seeds again on the same land, you cannot say they are infringing your rights. So to a certain extent, the lawmakers have struck the balance. Well, you must be asking yourself as to whether you could have a product when you trace it from development, going all the way to where we see it on the shelves. Could it happen that it was protected by different IP forms? Yes, that's possible. At an R&D stage, you may have patents that are specific to genetic sequences, for instance. But when it comes to a tangible product, when now we have come up with, for instance, a variety, you protect that under plant varieties, plant breeders' rights. Of course, under plant breeders' rights, if you want to protect under there, your variety must be new, it must be uniform, it must be stable. Actually, the Department of Agriculture, I think they even run the test of this where they actually plant it and test it and see if it meets those requirements. I have already mentioned that for patents, the standard tends to be quite high. Must be new, and that newness is universal. It's not only in South Africa. It must be new universally, and it must not be obvious to a person skilled in the art. I had mentioned that at some point, rights come to an end. For instance, I'm sure we are aware of the Pink Lady. Pink Lady is actually a trademark. It's not a plant variety. The plant variety itself was protected as a crisp pink, but that expired long time ago. So those people who actually want to use that, those apples, they can do so. But what they cannot do, they cannot turn around and say they are selling their apples and attach a trademark of Pink Lady. Because remember, a trademark can last for longer, as long as you renew it. It can last in perpetuity. So that's the message I wanted to send with that. Well, at this point, I'm glad I put this slide. It's the last slide of my presentation. I listened to Prof and Dr. Naidu. They were all talking about new ways of farming. Prof was talking about the society being urbanized. People are in the city, don't want to be in rural areas. But there's no enough land to farm in the city. What do you do? I invite you to look at this. I put a link there. Have a look at this report. WIPO has produced a report where they say they are doing data analytics of patents that are affecting or are promoting SDGs, that are making sure that at least we are on track with the SDGs. What are those technologies in those that are affecting the SDGs? So this information is public. One of the examples, actually, I think the one that was on the far left, is an invention that came out of Armenia, one of the small countries in Europe. They are measuring the conditions of the field, feeding the data back to the farmers, so the farmers kind of know when actually to irrigate the field. So they trying to avoid over-irrigating. So there's a lot that is happening there. I think it's already protected under patents, that information or that technology. Well, Singapore is famous for what Prof was talking about, vertical farming. So they have been acknowledged even in WIPO reports. So there are many inventions that are covered in this report. You can have a look. They have dedicated their time in analyzing patents in terms of how they can assist us in achieving the SDGs. I just want to touch on the point that was made by Dr. Naidu as well as to how it relates to IP and IP data, how we can make use of IP data to make sure that we focus on areas or we spend more of our effort in R&D in spaces that we know that have not been covered, or we build on inventions that are already existing. Based on this report, you can actually establish collaborations because you will know who works in what, in which country. They even cover regions as to what is happening in which region. But given that we don't have enough R&D funding in South Africa, it allows us as well to shape our R&D and focus in certain areas, not to go all over the place as researchers. I think I will stop there with that presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. What a wealth of knowledge. Yo. You know, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I just want to go and start my innovation tomorrow because I know I will have my limited rice and also the farmer's privilege. Did you know about that? Did you know about the farmer's privilege? Huh? So do you see attending such engagements is eye-opening? Huh? Amazing. Just a few pointers, very insightful presentation, Doctor. I think let's give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few pointers that I wanted to make is that it is very important to enable protection and access to your innovation. And also, I loved also when you were talking about understanding the IP rights, the patents, especially us as, you know, small farmer developments. Imbizo, the lady, she's still here. Is she still here? The lady who wanted to invent Imbizo, she lost out on a lot because she would have now known what are some of the experts she can go about in terms of protecting and trademarking her innovation. But I really, really love the engagement. And I think that it is very important when you spoke about also the funding opportunities, which brings us to the next speaker, who's now going to be speaking about, which brings us to our next speaker, who's going to be now talking about the finance opportunities, which is Miss Violetu Otiwe. Miss Violetu Otiwe graduated from the University of Pretoria with a BSc in Agricultural Economics, after which she kickstarted her professional career at the Bureau for Food and Agricultural Policy as a research assistant, working mostly with farm-level economics, with a focus on rural development and small-scale farmer development. She then joined the fruit industry and worked as an industry affairs manager, providing insights and advice to member associations, as well as providing advocacy, collaboration, coordination, and services on key industry-related matters. Vuyo then joined the Technology Innovation Agency, TI, in 2019, fulfilling the role of a program manager, leading the Agricultural Bioeconomy Innovation Partnership, which is ABIPP. ABIPP is a program of the DSI that is implemented by TIA within its agriculture business unit. It aims to co-fund, I'm sure you love that language. Do you? Do you love that language? It aims to co-fund, facilitate, manage, and coordinate multidisciplinary and multi-institutional programs and projects. The program focuses on development and commercialization of improved crops, livestock, and aquaculture, while also supporting the ongoing improvement of commercial varieties of plants and animals. All this in efforts to create jobs and ensure increased national food security. The program encourages collaboration, on national priorities and promote global competitiveness of the agricultural sector. Capacity and skills development are also a key focus area within the ABIPP program. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please give a warm round of applause for Vuyolwethu Kotiwe? She's joining us online. Are you there, ma'am?
Yes, I am here. Is everybody else there?
We are here, the innovator of collaboration, right?
Yes. Yes, thank you so much. Okay, program director, I can go ahead, right? I can start my presentation. Okay, I will just share my my presentation on my screen. So if I can perhaps just get an indication if it's available on your screens so that I can proceed. Okay. Colleagues, I just need a yay or nay. Okay, I think I'll start anyway. So, good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Vuyo Kotiwe. I'm from the Technology Innovation Agency, and just want to say thank you so much for the invitation to be a speaker for this engagement. It is an honor to be part of the conversations that actually drive the growth of our economy and also our overall, improving our overall state of our country. So today, my job is to talk about the financing innovations and investment opportunities that can assist within unlocking sustainable solutions to food security. So I think my fellow panelists have touched on most of the things that have to do with food security, all of the concepts and ideas around food security, is also the facts around it, and presenting also the challenges of food securities and also the impact of food security. So we're able to see from our speakers what it is that food security actually impacts on our day-to-day lives, right? So I won't be delving too much into that. I will go straight into the presentation. So first I want to discuss technology innovation in the local context. So in our country, we all know that we have the challenges of unemployment, challenges of inequality and poverty that continue to torment our people. This is represented by the unequal distribution of assets, the skewed distribution of income and employment. We have unequal opportunities also amongst our citizens, and also the access to public services. There's also inequality there. We also have seen as the segregated planning approaches without any viable economic and social linkages to the more economic active areas of our country. Part of our problem also involves poor or lack of access to socio-economic infrastructure, and we also then have at the moment, we can say it is a non-inclusive STI system. I am aware that that abbreviation STI is not very ideal, but it stands for the system. It stands for the System of Technology and Innovation. So that's what STI stands for. So the NDP is what is guiding us mostly when it comes to the technology innovation. And it stated that innovation is the primary driver of technological growth, and it drives higher living standards. So what is the innovation when we are zooming straight into it? It is then the multi-stage process whereby organizations transform ideas into new improved products, services, or processes. So that's what we mostly focus on in our work. So we're looking now at the South African innovation chain, right? We have in the far left-hand side, my left, we have the local knowledge where the research is done. And most of the time we find that there is a lot of funding that is pumped into local knowledge and research. And at times you see that it sits in gathering dust in the shelves of our science councils and our universities and so on. And sometimes we see that that local knowledge in the form of IP is then lost to the overseas technology development chain, because there isn't much support when it comes to the gap that is in between local knowledge, which is the research and local knowledge, and also the industry, which is then the commercialization, the manufacturing, which is where we have then the production of products and services, etc. So we find that within our South African context, we have a lot of IP being lost because there isn't enough funding, there isn't enough focus on the development of the IP that has been developed, and developing it into something that we can use and something that can develop our agriculture industry. So what this does is that it then causes for us to have a buildup on either sides, because we do not have much of a problem in terms of funding the production side or funding the research side. But we see that there is this gap in between where we have the high risk now. And that is where the Technology Innovation Agency then comes into that innovation chasm, trying to kind of close it by providing finance through various types of instruments, such that it's able to reach a stage where it can be then tested into the market and eventually then commercialized into products and services, etc. So what we have mostly is a lack of follow through throughout the development value chain. However, then that is where TIA is playing a big role in the space. So we come to this, which is where you see now where we have the TIA support being displayed here. So we have our basic research, applied research, the technology development, and then we have commercialization. So in the beginning, there are partnerships such as NRF, the universities and the science councils. That's the space that they play in, which is the basic research. Then we have the applied research, where then TIA support starts. So TIA support is mostly through the applied research all the way to tech development and some commercialization, because the one thing that also should happen is that the companies that are already commercialized also then come into partnership, which is where then TIA can kind of cut the cord, and then the innovation becomes a full-blown commercialized product or a service. So we play in a space of a high risk and very uncertain return, right? And this is the very, I could say, the one thing that TIA was kind of developed to do, to play in this very high risk and uncertain return space, right? So our focus is also non-financial. So we do have financial focus and non-financial focus. But mostly we do fund these innovations such that they are able to get through this chasm, where mostly some innovations actually come to die, unfortunately, because of lack of funding, lack of collaboration, lack of support, etc. So looking at then the TIA mandate. So TIA was then established specifically to provide for the promotion of the development and exploitation in the public interest of discoveries, inventions, innovations, and improvements. And for that purpose, then the Technology Innovation Agency was then established. So the object of the agency is to support the state in stimulating and intensifying technological innovation in order to improve economic growth and the quality of life of all South Africans by developing and exploiting the technological innovations. So how does then TIA play in this space? How does TIA then de-risk this space that seems to be where most of our innovations go to die? TIA has various risk funding schemes or risk funding instruments, and they vary in terms of quantum and also the type of support. So if we look at the bottom of our figure, we can see it moving from left to right. So we work mostly in technology readiness levels. So from 1, it's mostly basic research, 1 technology readiness levels. 1 to 2 is mostly basic research, which is what we see that our science councils and our universities do, and also a lot of some of the applied research. Then we have the seed funding within TIA, and seed funding also plays a role in these kind of low levels of technology readiness, which is mostly research and development, right? Then we also have TRL from 4 to 7, which is the applied research. The seed funding also plays a part here, where some of our funding that we get, we channel into some of the seed funding projects. But mostly from TRL 4 to 7, which is the applied research part, this is where we get our technology development fund. And then when we move from that, now having moved beyond technology readiness level 7, we then move to commercialization, where then it goes into market. So I will break down the different funding schemes in the following slides. So this just gives us, I spoke about TRL levels. So this gives us just an idea of how it works from the research lab into a simulated world and then into the real world, where we do have the products, we can touch them, we can see them, or we have the services that actually contribute to the economy, either in monetary value or otherwise. So when we're looking at the seed funding, then we are trying, by using the seed funding, we're trying to not be too far from the universities. So most of the time, it is administered by the, or administered through the universities and also research development agencies. The research development agencies include the Innovation Hub, Smart Exchange, it includes Eastern Cape Development Corporation, and all of the others that are listed there. The role of the seed fund is to leverage support. So the quantum of the funding is not always that large, but it's actually more to kickstart the innovation and also move it through the different TRL levels. So it's to leverage the support and to support throughout the TRL levels, and also very important, the intellectual property management, because this is where the IP is mostly developed. So TIA does, through the seed funding, not just funding, through the seed funding program, TIA does then provide the IP support and also all the non-financial support that is needed for a project or for an innovation to actually make it all the way to commercialization. So I think I want to say that each slide has a website, but I think it's all there. But this is the website, sorry, not the website, the email address. This is the email address for any inquiries that have to do with the seed funding, right? So then we spoke about the seed funding, which sits there at the bottom. The size of the funding is not that large, but it is stretched out throughout all the TRL levels. It does provide all the kind of fundamental support that innovations need. Then we move on to the Technology Development Fund, right? This is the most commonly accessed fund within the Technology Innovation Agency, and it's mostly to de-risk the technology. So providing all the funding or most of the funding to the innovators such that they're able to move through the TRL levels to a point where they can commercialize. So typically it starts from proof of concept. So the project must at least have provided some proof of concept, which is TRL4. And this is evidence typically deriving from an experiment or a pilot project, which then demonstrates the feasibility of an idea or observation. The funding instruments include conditional levies, loans, and also equity. So those are the types of funding instruments that we use. And there are also multiple rounds of fundings towards the full development. So it's not that once you have received the seed funding or an innovator has received the seed funding, they cannot then also access the technology development fund. So basically, an innovation can be kind of supported all the way through the innovation value chain. And that's to make sure that the innovation doesn't fall off and kind of then dies in a way, or is lost to maybe an overseas government or company or whatever the case is. And then we have the pre-commercialization support fund. This one sits there in the end. So it sits towards the end of the innovation value chain, where now the product is close to market and is ready to be commercialized and to also have an income or a profit rather. So this pre-commercialization support fund is mostly to bridge the gap between the innovations in the market. So now that we do have the product, we've supported the product all the way to the point where you are able to demonstrate the product or have a pilot project, then now it's that jump from that to the market. Otherwise, if there's no support, then the chances are the innovation is going to die out, or again, be lost to other countries. So what is the requirement for this? It should be a de-risked technology already. So it's not to say that the technology must have gone through all the kind of funding phases with TIA. So a innovation can come in at pre-commercialization stage for this support such that it's able to jump into market and also be commercialized. So we have then those schemes, but we also have innovation enabling programs. So we have the technology innovation cluster programs, where it's a collaborative RDI programs that leverage the strength of partners to develop a partnership. We have the technology stations program, and this enables universities to provide innovative SET solutions to SMEs. We also have technology platform programs, and these facilitate access to key infrastructure and expertise for technology innovation. We have grassroots innovation program that promotes innovations by communities for inclusive development with funding, mentorship, and enterprise development. And we have innovation skills development that strengthens the fundamental business skills that are required to operate in the business environment. And then we also have the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program. And this is a business acceleration program for SMEs in renewables, energies, waste, and water. So these are kind of across the board. This kind of gives you an idea of what TIA does, why TIA exists, and what we continue to strive to do, right? So this is just a footprint of the programs of the technology platforms across the country. We have the bio prospective platform that sits in Limpopo. We also have the TIA bioprocessing platform that is here in the KZN, and also the National Genomics platform. We also have several of them that sit at the universities, the Cape University's body imaging center at the UCT campus, and also drug discovery development platform. So there's quite a number of the technology platforms programs that are implemented through TIA in partnership with universities and other also development agencies. So this then gives a picture of where our technology stations sit. So this is a kind of like a strict partnership that TIA has with the universities of technologies, where you get testing and analytic services, rapid and prototyping and manufacturing, because some of these things, some of these services, we find that innovators do not have access to, and sometimes they cannot afford some of these services. So then TIA then, with a partnership of the universities of technologies, is able then to bridge that gap and provide these services to the innovators, which include technology demonstration and training. Sometimes there's consultation, there's technology audit and feasibility studies that can be conducted with the support of these technology stations. Now, having spoken about TIA as a whole, as an organization, I will then zoom into the agriculture part, which is where my role within TIA is at. So we have within TIA the Agriculture Bioeconomy Innovation Partnership Program. We call it ABIP for short. So ABIP is the instrument that implements the agriculture bioeconomy. Its goal is to increase productivity, food security, and sustainable rural development. And it works on the principles of inclusivity, transformation partnerships, and innovation driving growth of the sector, right? What it does, the program, it funds, it co-funds, it coordinates, it facilitates, and also actively manages multidisciplinary, multi-institutional agriculture bio-innovation programs. And this is to ensure that we have new products in the market, we have new processes that includes agro-processing, and also when we have all of this, how do we then disseminate these technological services such that even all South Africans have access to it and are able to benefit from the technologies that have been implemented. So then TIA plays then an implementing agent of this program, because the program itself belongs to the Department of Science and Innovation. However, TIA was appointed as the implementing agent to roll out this program. So this program was then informed by the bioeconomy strategy of 2013 that was launched by the then minister, Anokom, in January 2014. The bioeconomy, it refers to activities that makes use of bioinnovations based on biological sources, materials, and processes to generate sustainable economic, social, and environmental development. So that is where mostly the ABIP program is premised on. So this shows us the bioeconomy strategy and how and where its focuses are. We have a broad-based economy inclusivity and industrialization across all sectors, and this includes the agriculture, indigenous knowledge systems, industry and environment, and also health. So our main aim, or rather the bioeconomy strategy, the main aim with all of this is to create new bio-based services, products, and innovations for commercial and industrial development, and also to enhance the overall competitiveness of the agriculture sector. I won't go too much into this. This just shows you the thematic areas that we have and we focus on within ABIP. So we have, it's pretty broad and it looks like a lot, but it's actually not that much because we work mostly in partnerships. So we piggyback mostly on programs that are already running, or sometimes programs that are in its very early stages and we collaborate, or sometimes we actually come up with the programs ourselves with the help or consultation of universities, science councils, and sometimes industry as well. So we have crop or plant improvement, molecular breeding, and genome engineering. Also then on the flip side, we have the same for animal improvement. And then we also have our cross-cutting issues that we look at and we focus on and we fund. These are value chain analysis and development, food and nutrition security, agro-processing. We also have a small kind of focus on communication and marketing of the bioeconomy, which I think perhaps is an opportunity that we can still mine from. And we have then international partnerships as well that we focus on. So looking at the food and nutrition security, we have programs here that focus on ensuring that there is increased household food security, because sometimes the focus on national food security kind of doesn't trickle down to household food and nutrition security. So we do have programs that support that within our ABIP program. Like I said, ABIP doesn't work in isolation. ABIP was actually, it is in the name, it's the Agriculture Bioeconomy Partnership Program, right? So in its nature, we are supposed to work in partnership. It's actually, I don't think we do have a project that we run without a partner. So this slide gives you an idea of some of the partners that we work with within our program. We can see there is a lot of universities there. There are some science councils. We also have industry as well, like for instance, Syngenta and SAPU and PANA that work hand in hand with us in this program. So even though the program doesn't have enough or doesn't have much funding that is allocated to it. So you can see there on the side that from the 2017-2018 financial year till 21-22, there was only an allocation of 100 million that goes into ABIP. However, with that 100 million, and having all these partnerships, we were actually able to leverage co-funding of about 249 million. And we're able to have a much bigger and much more impactful reach rather than if we sat in a corner in a silo and working with that 100 million that we were allocated. So partnerships are a very big deal in the program, and that's how we managed to achieve most of the impact that we've been able to through this program. So looking at then innovation and sustainable food systems. So when we're looking at food security, we're looking at it in terms of food availability, food affordability, food safety, and also food access. So a sustainable food system consists of the economy, the economic, social, and also the environmental aspect of it. And then with all of this, then we are able to find opportunities in different spaces and different focus areas. That includes the food safety platform, where we can see what is it that we're actually ingesting. Is the food that we're eating safe for us? Agro-processing and rural economic development, that's the space we play in as well, or rather when it comes to sustainable food systems. We also have the biosecurity hub, and we look at also the neglected, underutilized species. We have the One Food Project, One Health, breeding, and then lastly, we have the breeding and new technology. So these are the kind of areas that we focus on when it comes to innovation and sustainable food systems. However, it's still not enough. There's still a lot of partnership that is needed, and there's a lot of kind of reach that can still be done. And that is through then, as I said, the partnerships and also just working together with the same focus and the same objectives. So some of our key strategic flagship programs within, so we have a lot of other projects and programs within the ABI program. So we have the wheat breeding platform. I'm not going to go into all of them because I suspect I am running out of time, but as an example of how one of our flagship programs within ABI has been able to utilize IP to kind of reduce food security or to play a role in reducing food security. So with the wheat breeding platform, it's actually it's ran at the Stellenbosch University, right? Which is where the pre-breeding for new varieties is done. And from this, because we know in South Africa, particularly with the wheat crop, we are more consumers than we are the producers of wheat. So basically the demand for wheat is much higher than what we are able to supply, which then means that we have to rely on other countries or other wheat producing countries to import from them. However, this is risky. And the speakers from the panel have indicated this, that there are other challenges that face those countries, which then could possibly lead to the decision of we are not going to release our wheat because we have COVID and we don't know how long this will go on for. So we have to then keep our wheat, which then is a risk for South Africa because we are a very intensive wheat consuming country. However, we still don't produce enough. So now we need to look at, and actually how this happened is that in the past, the millers, or rather, let me say, in the past, there was a focus on breeding for high quality. And then there wasn't much research and development into the high yielding variety. So then we have high quality wheat, yes. However, we don't have varieties that produce the quantity that we need. So now the shift, or rather the focus of the wheat breeding platform is now to breed for higher yields, but still retaining the high quality and also furthermore drought tolerance and also disease tolerance, right? So with this, we are able to then have high yielding varieties from the wheat breeding platform that will ultimately kind of serve to have the price of bread lowered, for instance. But the whole point is that we should have cheaper food, much safer food. So what the wheat breeding platform then it does, it then breeds for these varieties, but they don't work alone. So the Stellenbosch University works with Syngenta and other breeding companies, which include also the ARC, to ensure that once they have, they've released the lines, they're able to release them into those breeding programs, which include industry and also science councils. Then they are able to go on and develop the cultivars that can then be licensed and can also be released into or commercialized into the market, which should, the aim is to have access. So part of the need to be part of these programs is such that we influence the ultimate product that comes out in the end. So it should be available to all small scale farmers. It should, and that speaks of access, and also it speaks of the funding. So the pricing of it should be lower. So that's part of the de-risking that TIA does, that, you know, we are able to fund this part such that, you know, the seed is available to all wheat farmers that need it, or to all South Africans actually that need it, right? So that is one example. The other example I wanted to share, whereby you see the bridge between academia and the industry kind of closed, is an example of a PhD student who was at the University of Pretoria, and through his PhD research was able to actually develop IP with the university and co-own the IP with the university. And at a later stage then came to TIA, and I think it's a TRL4, so proof of concept. So at that stage then came to TIA to develop, to have assistance to develop his product. So then TIA is assisting him. Interesting enough, he's actually a chemical engineer that developed an invention that, how can I explain it? Okay, but basically his invention was more driven by, or within his field, but he was able to use that invention and apply it into the agriculture space, which then shows us how IP, or rather innovation, can play across multidisciplinaries, not necessarily just what it was developed to do in the beginning. And I think that is a very nice, example of where academia then meets industry, because then also just across his whole project, they are kind of support structures, because in the end, we also have a commercialization partner that comes on board to say, if this is done, A, B, and C, then I will come on board as the commercialization partner to play a mentorship role, or to play a role of getting the product to market, but only once we get to this stage. So part of our job within TIA is to ensure that the innovator gets to that point, whereby they're able to have a commercialization partner that will help them market the product, etc. So we also have many other flagship programs. As you can see on your screen, we have the National Biosecurity Hub. We also have the Strategic Innovation Partnership for Grains and Oilseeds. So underneath this under this program, we also have produced 5 maize hybrids that are more drought tolerant. And with the looming drought that we have now, these maize hybrids are able to assist the farmers that need it the most, which are the small scale farmers. And with the assistance, then we're able to have these hybrids accessible and also affordable. We also have the National Sorghum Cluster, and then also the Aquaculture Cluster. I think that is the end of my presentation, but I will leave with saying that in conclusion, I think the work that TIA does plays a very important role in the innovation space within South Africa. However, most of it is through partnerships. Most of it is through partnerships and working together to ensure that we all meet the objectives of the country, and also the strategic objectives that we have set out for us. So thank you so much once again for the opportunity to have presented to you. And Program Director, that is where my job ends. Thank you so much.
So much, Puyo. I can see when it comes to money matters, hey, the passion is too much. You just want to extend the conversation so much. So those who want to start their innovation hubs, businesses, and other innovation avenues, you now know all the information about seed funding, right? Right. And what I love was that there were also contact details, email addresses, as well as websites. So at your own spare time, you can just go check them out and really start with your innovation, because we're still on the roll of saying the role of IP in addressing what? Food security. Amazing. So ladies and gentlemen, we are drawing to the near end of our program. But I just want us to maybe just stand up and stretch a bit, please. Just for 10 seconds. Just stand up and stretch. Back a bit. Stand up, please. 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's stretch. Let's stretch. Maybe high five to 2 people near you. High five. High five to 2 people near you. Are you still here? Ask them, are you still here? High five, high five, high five. You can sit down. Thank you so much. That made a difference, right? Huh? Awesome. So now we are moving to our last speaker of the day, and we are now going to test the food security by the refreshments after, right? So we are now going to move on to Miss Nokolo. We are now going to move to Miss Nokolo Mthethwa, who's an editor at UKZN Press. So Ms. Nokolo will be touching on exploring knowledge horizons by introducing the UKZN Press and its role in academic publishing. Ms. Nokolo, over to you. Izandla, boy, Izandla.
I will not be long because I understand Uguti, our audience consists of students and it's Friday. So I will try to be as brief as possible. My role here, I'm from UKZN Press and we are here to encourage writing books, right? So we've heard our speakers, everything that has been said, but where is it documented? Besides documents that you can find online, do we have books where 10 years later, we can come back to the information that has been shared today? So I know, okay, then if you want to hide information from youth, you put it in a book. I think it's time we crash the stereotypes because, especially because we are in a higher institution, like it or not, especially if you are a postgrad student. As a postgrad, there's a certain number of books that you have to read per year. You can't tell me go to your master's, but you've only read 2 books, really. Come on. UKZN Press is situated behind the OMB, right here in the yard, again, just in here around the corner. But we hardly see students coming in, buying books. And this thing of books are expensive, but you can afford pizza. But you can't afford a book. Anyways, again, so basically, we are saying, Guguti, especially as a postgrad student, please write books and in research that you are doing, especially at master's and PhD, we publish it. We publish it as UKZN Press. We like publishing our own students, our own staff, even you, Prof. Where is your PhD? Is it published? It doesn't yet. Knowledge doesn't expire. Doc, up on my PhD. Please, bring and come. We want to publish. So we convert my PhD thesis mostly into a book. And the next thing you know, you are a published author. The next thing you know, your book is prescribed. And the next thing you know, oh, you're famous. But again, we know in South Africa, Uguti, our authors don't make a lot of money. So don't do it for money, do it for passion, because even yourself, when was the last time, if ever, you've been to a bookshop? Who has been into a bookshop? Wagwangen?
Yeah, and when you went inside, did you buy anything? 1 or 2 people out of how many? You see, that's also research that you can publish, the readership at UKZN particularly. So, in closing, we are here to say, postgraduate students especially, your research that you do, your thesis, please come to UKZN Press. Let's have a chat and see if is it publishable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we please give it up for Bagit? I just loved how her presentation had some humor, and it really, just made us to reflect and say, when was the last time you actually bought a book, right? Right? So this is a challenge, ladies and gentlemen, to go and buy books at the UKZN Press. I heard there were master's students, PhD students, so take your work and publish it, okay? And be a published author, and you could be famous, like she said, right? So now we are going to go to a short question and answer session. It could be a comment, or it could be a question you just want to pose before we move on to the last segment, which is going to be Prof making the closing remarks. Is there any students from the audience maybe, or anyone who wants to make a comment or a final question, please, from the audience? We want to hear more from you one last time. No one from our online community? Okay, there's a student there.
Good afternoon. My name is Figile Klove, a Student Support Services Officer in this campus, Pietermaritzburg. I just want to comment on the section that we had today, which is, I think, it's something that we should have it a long time ago, just to let us know and just to share information. Because if we talk about food security, it's something that we actually feel in this campus currently, as we are facing the similar situation where we see that our students are really suffering because of food insecurity. So having this section is, I think, just gonna have more information on how to encounter our situation in this campus. So thank you so much for arranging this situation, even though the attendance was not that much. But going forward, I think we're just gonna have more section like this just to teach us a lot about these issues we are facing, because some other students are hardly able to copy with this kind of situation. So thank you so much.
Wow, wow. I think our job is done here, right? We've achieved the motive of today if we hear such comments that these are challenges that are not happening only in our community, but also our students are facing food insecurity challenges. And with the NSFAS challenges, they are unable to cope. And without sufficient food, are you going to be able to cope in the classroom? And now that it leads to your dropout rates, your failure rates, and we really need to combat this challenge. And I think I should really give it up, even though I'm still going to do the vote of thanks. But thank you so much, UKZN Incubate, for developing such innovation, because it was really needed. And now I'm now going to hand it over to Prof, who's now going to be doing the closing remarks as our keynote address speaker. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Can we please give her a warm welcome again?
Thank you very much. The room still looks quite similar to when we started. So thank you for staying. It's been a long afternoon of quite intense discussions. I want to just raise a few points to help us think as we leave today. We've heard from various speakers. One of the first things we heard was the SDGs that should be fulfilled by 2030. We have 6 years. actually, maybe 5.5 years. And it's quite clear that there's a challenge, it will not be met. So my question to all of us is, knowing that in the background, we have challenges. We have a challenge of working in segregation. The problem is complex. We've seen the definition, we've seen the complex food system from different speakers. We need to work better as teams, both in research. We are in a university, so we need to improve where we are first at a university, but those who are in the working space. In government, we need government, but it's quite notorious to working in silos. There's great improvement, but it can be better, both in the planning and the execution. Because if we don't plan together, communities won't own the projects, businesses won't own it will always be someone else's problem. So working better away from individual working is important. We also had a challenge from one of the speakers, one of the audience members here. Why do we work away from those who are implementing? Agricultural extension officers. So we are producing a lot of knowledge, but far away from those who are tasked with translating that knowledge day to day. We could be very far with some of the challenges we face if we were working together, not by choice, but by design. If I know that in my performance, and my boss who's sitting right here, when we do my performance management, he wants to know, so who's your extension officer team? What have you done? Did you achieve it? I know that it hits me in my performance. Therefore, it's no longer a choice, but it's the task that I need to do. So that information will flow better. I actually think it's something that needs leadership and quite fast. The issue of leadership also came through quite importantly, because working together means we need leaders to decide to change the current status quo. We can come back again and talk about working in silos, working in segregation. It won't change until leaders make the policy change. It's quite simple, actually. You're given the mandate to lead, therefore lead. So we need to see that change. We've also heard of the great support and funding programs from the government tier. What also fascinated me from the legal side is that there is work that is trying to identify current IP that could assist the acceleration of this SDGs. And on the other side, we have the legal constraints that breeders' rights or some of these rights can last with individuals or institutions for 20 to 25 years. Therefore, knowing what those technologies are, how can we bring in change in terms of sharing those technologies now? How do we take away that 25 years to 20 years? It's quite urgent to feed the planet more, whether it's technologies around water. If that right is sitting commercially with a company or a breeder somewhere, and yet we know that it can assist humanity better, what are the instruments there? I don't have an answer, but I was interested to hear that there's actually work to identify those technologies, but at the same time, there's this legal constraint. We also heard about working together, but there's an issue of capacity. Do we have enough capacity? We have amazing policy documents, sometimes even programs, but we tend to be constrained in terms of implementation. When we are supposed to act, we have more meetings about the action. So we need to change our mindset to have a meeting of checking progress, just like how my boss wants to see my performance management thing tomorrow. He's been sending emails. So I can say, I did work very hard today. So we need to break those silos and work better, and we need leadership. So what I want to leave with is sometimes it takes a crisis, pressure. So let's look at the COVID-19 lockdowns as a country now, as a region, as a globe, to say thank you. You have shown us where our weaknesses are in the food system. We knew we were reliant on imports, but actually what would happen if those who are producing wheat? It is said that every household in South Africa, in certain regions, has 2 loaves of bread per day. Bread is made from flour. Flour comes from wheat. We heard about the biotechnology platform that's doing work on the pre-breeding work to breed more wheat varieties that produce better yields, which means we're not there yet. What would happen those who are selling us flour and wheat decide, not today? Think about what that means. We don't think about it because it seems so easy to go to a shop and buy your loaf of bread. So the crisis has helped us to say we need more in-house capacity, in-country capacity to produce more. I'm using wheat as an example. There's many examples with the types of food and other technologies. So let's thank the crisis, learn from it, and also act. And lastly, food security concerns all of us. It's very personal. We ate something, I think we're going to eat something. We didn't produce it. There's a system. We each play a role in it. There's a lawyer in the room today. Fascinating work. Because if you're holding IP to a wheat variety that can feed us better as a country, but you have 25 years rights, there's an issue there. So we need to think better. So thank you very much for your attendance. Food security concerns all of us. It's complex, but we each have a role, and let's work together better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Prof. I love your last words. We each have our individual responsibility, and let's work. And let's work. And I see that, if you've noticed and listened throughout the presentation, the word partnership and collaboration was coming out very strong, right? It means that do not do in silos, because no man is an island, but let's collaboratively work together to really drive the IP in terms of solving our societal challenges. Okay, so I would just like now to close, because it's been a long day, right? But at least a long day of wealth knowledge. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming, but most importantly, I'd like to thank our speakers for providing such wonderful and insightful presentation that got us to think about thinking and activate our complex thinking about really addressing the IP in terms of the food security in our country. And also, I'd like to thank the ICS crew for holding us down. We had no difficulties and technicalities, because we know when you're doing this hybrid, hey, it can get challenging, but it was just smooth operation all out. And also a wonderful thank you to our RT crew, and also the most important guest for today, yourselves. Thank you so very much for coming. Prof, you did say that the audience of the seats looked like this when we first started, and they said something. It says what we were doing was really informative. It kept you on your seat, right? So I think that deserves also a round of applause. So just know that when you go out in your own communities, in your own universities and fields, know that you have support and know that you have various programs. And now, as we're going to go to our respective spaces for lunch, make it also a space for networking, okay? Because also you need to have contacts with these esteemed experts. I mean, if you want to start your business now, you now know Ms. Dr. Kwele he's got your back in terms of explaining all the IP rights for you, okay? So please, don't let them go. Do you understand me? Do not let them go. Hold their hands and say, I want your email address. Network, 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 and engage. So I'd like to just say a last announcement to say, our speakers and our guests, can you please go on the room on my right? And students, can you please go on the other side? We have a beautiful setup for you. And lastly, enjoy your day and